the MARTA Board of Directors. It's Thursday, May 15th. May I have a motion for approval of the March 20th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting minutes? I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any discussion? Can we please vote? The minutes are approved. Our second item on the agenda is a briefing of MARTA's fiscal year 25 external audit engagement by Brad Shell, a partner with Crow LLP. Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome and good morning. So we can get this in the right spot here. Good morning. Thank you all for allowing me to be here and present to you all. My name is Brad Shelley. I'm an audit partner at Crow, external auditors for MARTA, and as mentioned, here to present just a few slides on the planning stages of this year's audit. So I think we have some slides. I'm going to go ahead. So some of the key engagement team members listed here. I think the key thing that I think is a positive is we're able to bring back a consistent team that we've had in the past. So Catherine Brothers is a senior manager, Stacy Kernow is a manager. We do have additional team members as well, and we have rotated in a few new team members as well to make sure that we're trying to get some fresh eyes on the testing and making sure that we're looking at those each year. And then our partner on this is Benford Brown. Tim Watson is the partner there, and we have been working with them for, I think this is 8 years now. So consistent team there, and looking forward to working with the MARTA team as well. Here in this slide you'll see the deliverables. I won't go through each of these. These are consistent with what we have provided to you in the past. The upper section is related to the financial statement audit of the ACFR and financial statements of MARTA. The main report there is the independent auditor's report. That's where we will provide an opinion on your financial statements. The middle section, the federal compliance audit, that is related specifically to your federal grant funds and any federal loans that you may receive. So two different reports that we provide there. We also provide an in-relation opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and then we do the certification of the data collection form that has to be submitted after the audit is finished. The last line that's on here is related to the FTA and the National Transit Database that requires agreed upon procedures be performed by an auditor on various operating and financial data that you are required to submit to them. So we will perform those procedures again this year. Next slide. So this is an overall audit approach, fairly consistent. I'd say in general our audit approach doesn't really change much year from year. We do take a fresh look each year. We do risk analysis during the planning stages. We do try to identify new transactions, new changes in accounting standards or auditing standards, things of that nature. So there are a number of things that we do have to look at fresh each year, but the overall plan is fairly similar. So we're going to go from a planning stage, which is where we're at right now. We go through interim testing. We do risk analysis through both of those stages. Once we complete our interim field work, that's when we start planning for the year-end field work, which is where we do the bulk of our testing. And then we finish up with the review of the financial statements and preparation of the other reports. For this year, there are two new accounting standards that will be implemented. GASB 101, which is compensated absences, and I do anticipate there will be some impact there. So that is a change that you'll see where there'll likely be an additional liability, probably not material, but maybe a significant liability related to various types of leaves that maybe were not accrued before. So the accounting standards have changed a little bit there in how you look at those types of leave. Typically sick leave is the one that we see most commonly required to be accrued at some level at this point. GASB 102, certain risk disclosures, is one that is not likely to have any impact on MARTA's financial statements. If anything, there might be a footnote disclosure, but this is looking at contingencies and commitments and any contingencies that may be out there that maybe have a negative impact and create additional risk, then you would need to disclose those. So we're having continued conversations with GASB on this one just to understand a little bit more context on what they're expecting to see and what levels of risk, right? Because every agency, every governmental agency has risks. I don't think what their goal isn't to disclose every risk that everyone has. So we're trying to figure out what is that line where they want to see that. And so we'll work with you on implementing that one. Other things that we'll look at, obviously we look at internal controls every year. We look at federal grant funding, as I said, as part of the compliance testing. We're also going to have some discussions around the AFC 2.0 deployment and what impact that might have on the financial statements, either from how we need to audit, how we get information, et cetera. So we'll have some discussions around that and determine what we need to do there. And then the traditional risk areas, we'll obviously continue to test those as well. Next slide. So this is a fairly high-level timeline of the audit for this year. So we actually have already completed the interim field work, so we're a little bit advanced in this. The year-end field work, that'll start August 18th. That usually lasts for about 3 to 4 weeks, generally speaking. And then we're also doing some other testing after that related to the NTD and maybe wrapping up single audit. But the bulk of that testing will be about a month long. MARTA provides financial statements. We'll review those, and that you kind of see some back and forth there from the review process. Ultimately, we'll provide a final draft financial statements by October 31st. That will then be presented at the November 21st Audit Committee meeting, and we will finalize shortly after that meeting. The last couple there are related to the annual comprehensive financial report. So that is just taking the basic financial statements of MARTA, adding in a little bit more unaudited information, the statistical information in the back, and a few other things like that. So we do look at that, but all of that additional information is unaudited. Next slide. As we have every year, we are required to make a few inquiries of the audit committee. You can see some of the fraud risks that we have identified, and these are fairly general fraud risks. These, I would say, are not specific to MARTA, that we have specific concerns of any of these things, but these would be fraud risks for any entity. So as you take a look there, we always ask for feedback from the committee on whether you have any concerns of fraud. We obviously make inquiries internally as well. We do a number of testing procedures around fraud, but one of the things that we always do is make an inquiry of the committee. So either if anyone has any concerns around potential fraud, suspected fraud, et cetera, feel free to let me know either today, or you can contact me afterwards and we can discuss that. Also, obviously, always want to have any input from the committee that they may have from even outside of fraud, any other risks, any other things that you maybe think that we should look at closely. That feedback is always welcome. So again, either today or offline, if you have any comments for me, feel free to reach out. And we'll do the same. So as we go through the audit process, if anything significant comes up, we will be sure to make the audit committee aware of those in advance of the November meeting. If not, then we'll present the final results in November. Next slide. These are, again, just some of the fraud inquiries that we would ask. So I'm not going to read through all these, but you can see these are generally the inquiries that we would make to management and to internal audit to understand if there's any fraud. But again, if the committee is aware of any, please contact me. Next slide. Last thing here is just some emerging issues. So we went through some of the accounting standards that are being implemented for this year. For next year, there's just one currently, GASB 103, the financial reporting model. There will be some minor changes there, mostly around the management discussion and analysis section. I don't anticipate major impacts from that. So we'll continue to work with the MARTA finance and accounting team on that to make sure that gets implemented next year. We'll continue to check in on the infrastructure projects you have. That's a big area that we do testing on, is capital projects and improvement, and testing both CIP and capital assets that are placed into service, making sure those are being accounted for properly. So as those projects continue on, we'll continue to have discussions and do testing around that. And then we continue to have discussions around the Inflation Reduction Act, currently still in place. We'll see where that goes with the current administration, but there are still opportunities out there for tax credits for various types of capital expenditures that have energy savings. So we do have a tax team that works in that area and helps clients through that to assist in filing for those credits if they have any opportunities. So those are some of the things that we are looking at outside of this, and again, just happy to be working with MARTA again, and we'll continue to try to bring any experience and knowledge we can from the transportation to you all. With that, I'll open up any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Do we have any questions? Mr. Durrett?
Tax credits.
Yeah.
How would they apply to MARTA? Because
That's a good question, and that's the most common question that we get across all of the transit agencies that we work with. Right, you don't file tax returns, right? So that's the first question is, well, how do we have a tax credit, or how could we have a tax credit? It doesn't matter. The way this structure is, the way that act is structured, you are able to get credits even if you don't pay any taxes. So if you have certain types of vehicles, if you have EV charging stations, either that you're utilizing for MARTA or otherwise, that you have purchased or built, there's different types of glass, electromagnetic glass, that can be claimed and you can get credits for. And the way that it works at a high level is you identify these costs, and then the year that they are placed into service, you are able to file a 990, which is what a tax exempt organization would file, and you claim those credits then, even though you'd have no other income or anything like that you'd have to report. You would file the 990 and you would receive the credits. So you'd file it there, and even though you've paid zero, you may get 500,000 in credits, and you'll get a refund of $500,000. So that's generally at a very high level how it would work. Again, we're kind of day to day on that as far as how long is this going to be available. So we've been trying to work with our clients to understand, do you have any that you can claim right now, because it's still a program that's available at the current time.
one other question. In October, I saw you're going to get the National Transit Database report.
Correct.
And then you do something with that and
Yes.
and look for errors or confirm that the data is correct?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of both. There are prescribed procedures that we have to do. So the FTA has prescribed, I think, 26 or 27 procedures that they want an auditor to perform. It is less than an audit, so they're just agreed upon procedures. So some of them are verify that you have a policy in place on reviewing. Okay. Some of them maybe recalculate the numbers that are here. Some of them maybe, test a sample to make sure that you have support for the numbers that are being included on the form. And it's mostly around vehicle revenue miles, hours, mm-hmm. Some financial data as well, expenses. So it doesn't encompass the entire form, which is several pages long, but it focuses on those key ones, and those are procedures that we do every year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, Brad, two questions. Is Benford and Brown Associates, are they here?
They're not here now.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I know that they're on the team. I didn't know if they played a specific role in doing something as you go through this audit process.
Yes. So typically what they assist us with is the federal grant compliance testing.
Okay.
They do a lot of that, and for us, they will also do a lot of the National Transit Database testing. Those are the two primary areas. We sometimes will have them do other areas, maybe some internal control testing, some journal entry testing, things like that. So they're incorporated pretty heavily into the audit process.
Okay. All right, and my next question has to do with, you mentioned that you do some statistical analysis of the financials just to use that as part of your audit landscape. What does that look like? I mean, is that just, you just select the area and you just go through it based on a template that you have? How do you figure out what that looks like?
Well, so I don't know if you're referring to, I mentioned some statistical schedules that go in there. Those are separate, so those are not audited. Those come from MARTA.
Okay.
That's various information. I mean, do we do sampling? Do we do different statistical analysis? We definitely do that. So we'll do analytics of, revenue is an area where we can do analytics pretty easily to be able to look at not just year over year changes, but we can look at, okay, what is the ridership numbers? We have something to anchor it in, and then we can do some analytics around that. So that's one example of an area where we might do some analytics. We obviously do current year, prior year, current year budget, those types of things. Just those are more on the front end for planning purposes. But yeah.
Okay, good. Just want to know how in depth that looks like.
Yeah.
That sounds good. All right.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Shell. We appreciate this information. Look
You're
forward
welcome.
to seeing you in November.
Yes, look forward to it. Thank you.
So next we have Mr. Zanoff, who's going to come up and do an internal audit activity briefing.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mr. Greenwood, members of the MARTA Audit Committee and MARTA Board. Good morning. My name is Samuel Zanoff. I'm the head of the Internal Audit Department at MARTA. Let's see if I can move the slides myself, the magic tool here. Today I will give you a briefing on the internal audit activity for Q3 of fiscal year 25, beginning in January 1st and ending on March 31st, 2025. On the back end of the presentation, I will also give you a view of what I'm proposing to be the fiscal year 26 audit plan for the organization. Beginning, as it's customary, with our operational audit group, we kicked off 3 operational audits. The first one is the capital program follow-up audit, and I'm going to spend just a minute on this one because in prior audit committee slides, we had this audit that had 27 findings. A lot of them finished, some of them in process, and it was kind of becoming very difficult to track and accurately report the status of all these remediation efforts. So for the last couple of times, I've disclosed that we're planning to engage a very specialized construction audit firm to kind of get a new, fresh, accurate, and fair baseline for that capital program, central program management office and activity, which is something we have done now. We have contracted a company called Towson Solution. They're specialized in construction auditing, a lot of expertise both in auditing. They're very involved with the Institute of Internal Auditors, which is our governing body, but also very specialized in construction auditing. So we've engaged with them to come and work with us and get that fresh baseline. And we're just talking with Kerry about our entrance conference later on this month. Summerhill BRT, we were in the reporting phase. We're hoping to issue this report either this week or early next week. So we'll report on that in the next audit committee meeting. Rail station management, we were in field work again. This audit is almost ready, so we'll report the outcome at the next audit committee meeting. The Indian Creek station follow-up, we've received the management responses and we're currently reviewing those. I think we might be able to close 2 of the 3 findings, but I really want to spend sufficient time and rigorously reviewing those responses before we kind of adjudicate how we go, whether we close them or whether we put some due dates towards which we kind of shoot to fix the remediation. But overall, 3 findings from the Indian Creek audit, and then we got another 3 audits that are in various different stages of completion. Prior operational audits that we've talked about before, there's 2 slides, slide A and slide B, which will follow. Clayton County operations and maintenance facilities, 4 findings. We've received the management responses on those, and you see the due dates for the corrective action plans to be completed. We'll work with Carrie and her team to monitor the completion and then report on the completion status of those 4 significant findings. And as they come in, we'll report to the audit committee whether they're finished or not. The bus operations, CDL stands for Commercial Driver's License, and I should have put a footnote there, and medical cards, which go along with the commercial driver's licenses. Those 3 significant findings, there are new draft standard operating procedures that are addressing the findings. We do need, from a MARTA standpoint, to get those drafted into final sign-off and production. And I don't see a reason why we can't do that by the time the next audit committee rolls in, but the information there is pretty rigorous. So we should have those closed by the next audit committee meeting. I don't see a reason why not. The employee timekeeping audit, that one finding has to do with teledriver replacement. The board approved funding for the replacement of teledriver. Now they're moving towards procurement, which means that date of July, we're kind of already done that milestone, if you will. And I'm working with Rhonda and maybe giving her a little bit too much hard time, but we're working on a reasonable new future date where teledriver will be put in production, the process is established around that system, and then we'll be able to kind of have a new system that really provides better service to the authority. So that day will change to a future date at the next audit committee. So please don't be surprised when you see a different date. There is a reason for that. This date was put there basically to see if we get the budget and if we get the board authorization, which has already happened. So we'll have a future date on that. Slide B on previous audit findings. There's not much new data there. Overall, we have 12 significant findings that we're tracking across the 2 slides, slide A and slide B. 3 closed and 9 in process, and we'll continue kind of take some of these audits off the table when the corrective action plans get fixed and remediated. I will switch over to the information technology audit group. In Q3, we have the train control and SCADA access management audit. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. It's too technical term, but that's what it's called. This is our train control network and some of the auxiliary information networks that sort of manage that environment. This is a technically complicated area because this is not like our MARTA enterprise network, which every company has to a various degree. This is what is commonly known as an industrial control network. Power plants have that, nuclear facilities have that, manufacturing facilities have that. We have this in the form of a train control network, very different technology, very different operating systems and the way they function. So we're spending a lot of time really kind of looking into the controls that are different than what you would see in the MARTA network, like the enterprise network, and make sure we have the right controls. We should issue this report this month. So next audit committee meeting, we'll be able at a very, very high level to talk about the findings, if there are any. From a prior audit perspective, we're tracking a number of prior information technology audits. The organization, the IT team, and the cybersecurity team have been able to move some of the past due findings into the in-process findings or close them. In the last audit committee, we had a number that was 8 that was highlighted in yellow. Now that has been brought down to 5. The one that has the most, that number 4, without going into too much detail of what that is, because we don't want to feed information to the bad guys through YouTube. But progress is being made, and we got to continue to accelerate that process to get to a point where we all agree what the final remediation looks like, what the timeline looks like, and then we're going to be moving that to the left. So I don't want to leave the impression with the board that nothing's being done and people are sitting on their hands, because that will not be accurate or fair. Work is being done, and it needs to continue to be done so we can kind of accelerate the progress and get to a final understanding of how we're going to fix that issue. So we'll continue to track that and report that to the audit committee. And I've apologized before, and I'll apologize every time. I just can't go into the level of detail that I'd like to, just because it's, you know, people can listen to it. Contract audit group, busy quarter with 8 audit report issues, 8 audit reports issued during the quarter. No unidentifiable overhead rate costs, which is good. I think our contractors are learning that we're looking at their overhead rates. We're challenging some of their costs, so we're kind of, you know, 0 is a good thing. Unidentified, unsupported costs in some of the change orders of approximately $250,000. Those were kind of almost equally divided or split between 3 proposals. Overall, typical number for any quarter. We exited the quarter with 27 audits under review. This is like an ongoing pipeline. We receive them, we get them done as quickly and as diligently as we can. And then we issue the report, we get the next one, and we just keep the wheel turning. This wheel never stops, ever. So we're getting into the busy season of Q4. Typically, in any given year, we're at about 100 to 120 contract audits just in that particular segment of the audit department. So we try to do them both quickly but diligently as well. From a fraud, waste, abuse, we had a DNI referral which we could not substantiate looking at the facts. Allegation of a bid influence. This was reported also in the prior audit committee meeting, and I was hoping that we would be able to finish it, but there was more work to be done in this investigation. I just want to feel comfortable that when it's closed, it's really closed. So we had to look at more data. Let me put it this way. But I think we're close to getting it done. And then the unexplained excessive overtime. We got this from management. We looked at their paperwork, their work papers, etc. We were satisfied with the quality of their review, and we kind of gave it back to them for adjudication and discipline. I want to switch gears at this point of the presentation and talk a little bit about our fiscal year 26 audit plan. We're still in fiscal year 25, but typically in the May audit committee meeting, I'd like to go over the proposed plan for FY26. The reason for that is I want to hit the ground running July 1st of this year, which is the first day of the fiscal year. As soon as we review our audit plan, then we can start planning our first wave of audits. That gives us the month of June to kind of prepare and hit the ground running. This is why we're talking about it now. The plan is a risk-based plan. That's very important to understand. We cannot cover every element of risk in the authority. We got to go by the highest level of risk relative to the strategy and the operations of MARTA. You know, this is not a static plan, which basically means we put a plan in place, but if there's new risks that transpire, if there's other needs that the authority has in place, we're able to change and dynamically pivot throughout the year. So we may add audits to the audit plan, and obviously we'll disclose that to the audit committee, or we may subtract audit and replace them with other audits depending on the circumstances, but it's not a set in stone plan. It's kind of our view of risk, but if things change for some strange reason, then we're able to pivot. And finally, we're trying to cover strategic, operational, financial, and compliance risks for the authority, which is in the last bullet point. Overall, we're looking at 12 operational projects, 6 projects in the information technology space. From a contract perspective, we can't precisely predict the number of contract audits we're going to get. As I mentioned earlier, we get anywhere between 100 and 120 a year, and we get them through the system. And then the fraud investigations, we deal with those as they come in. There can be anywhere between 0 and 12 a year, and it's never like a static number. It's very different year to year. This is a view of the actual projects, and I can't go into any great level of detail for every one of these projects during the meeting. This is a very high-level description, beginning with the employee overtime. We're going to review the controls related to overtime and extra time planning, recording, and approval. I think it's a risk for the authority, just like many other government agencies around overtime. We'll look at the controls around that process. Workers' comp and casualty losses. This is a bit of an unusual audit. The idea here is to look at not what we're paying, because we know what we're paying, but what are some of the root causes, and are there strategies to mitigate the future exposure in terms of not allowing some of the same things to happen again and reduce the financial exposure as a result of that. The alertness assurance policy is a compliance audit related to compliance with federal regulations and MARTA policy. We do have policies, and they're important to be followed. The new rail car delivery readiness, we're about to begin to get more and more rail cars, so we're going to look at how ready we are to accept those and over time put them into service. On-time service delivery, this is related to rail, bus, mobility. We'll have to kind of get deep into the scope and decide whether we're going to do all 3 modes or whether we're going to focus on one mode and maybe do another mode later on, another mode later on. We haven't made that decision yet, but we will make that as the audit kind of approaches. The final on this page, the MARTA management audit, will be helping the authority to kind of track the progress of the recommendations from KPMG, phase 1, phase 2, and then kind of as the year progresses and as the 4 years, as a reminder, the management audit has to happen every 4 years. And even though that sounds like a whole lot of time, 4 years go by, and before we know it, we're there at the next management audit. So we want to make sure we're dealing with the recommendations in a very methodical way. And I can report to the audit committee where we are from time to time. On the second page of the operational audit plan, we have a huge capital program. I have 4 of these audits on the books, so to speak. ALIS is our online invoicing system in the capital space, so we would look at that. And then we would also evaluate 3 specific projects, which right now look as TBD. We will be looking and working with the management team. We'll be assessing the risk, and we'll pick 3 specific projects. They're in probably various different phases of development, and then go and verify execution controls, etc. And as these things get specified, as you know, you'll see them on the earlier slides of the audit committee. Police property and evidence is an audit that we do as a service to the MARTA Police Department. It's a requirement of their CALIA certification. We just finished the audit, and we're about to issue the audit report for this year, so they can continue with their recertification. Every year we follow the CALIA standards for auditing high-risk property and evidence, things like weapons, drugs, jewelry, cash, etc., to make sure they're accounted for and there's a chain of custody that's being followed. And then we spend significant amount of our audit hours on following up on the remediation. And I want to call that out because, Some of my peers don't do that, but I firmly believe that if we don't follow up, we just have a piece of paper called an audit report. If we don't get to a better state of events in the agency, if there's no better controls, no better processes at the end of this audit, we're just like producing paper. And we're spending a whole lot of time following up, and I think my friends here, sometimes they don't like it, but it has to be done. From an information technology perspective, a lot of our stuff, not all of it, but a lot of our stuff is related to cybersecurity and information security. The board approved the CBDC technology procurement. We want to engage with the execution team early on because from a cybersecurity perspective, this is very important. Now, you know, as we start to plan, we'll see how that engagement actually evolves. But this is one of those things that it's better to get it right off the bat in the design phase because it's impossible to fix if something is missing on the back end. Okay, again, we're living in the world of industrial control system. This is the computer-based train control or communications-based train control, I'm sorry. And then we have to really like get it right the first time and figure out how we're gonna keep it up to date after it gets implemented. Cloud implementation security, more and more stuff moves to the cloud. So we got to figure out, you know, whether we have the right controls as we implement those cloud solutions. Information security incidents response. This is a very foundational thing that every organization should have, and it should work well. So we'll work with Lawrence to see, and Tyson to see how that process works at MARTA. MARTA-owned data centers. This is more of a resilience, disaster recovery and business continuity type of audit, not so much a cybersecurity, if you will. New fare collection systems audit, also something that would like to get in early on because it's better to get it right the first time than to kind of retrofit better controls on the back end. It's a lot cheaper to get it right at the beginning, both from a process perspective and from a technology perspective. So again, not so much of a cybersecurity, although we'll look at the designed cybersecurity controls into that audit. And again, follow up on previous audit findings, which is very important. So with that said, Madam Chair, this concludes my briefing today, and I will yield the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pond.
Emil, I have 2 or 3 things. The last point you were talking about was follow-up, and I think that's extremely important. I very firmly believe it's up to the internal audit staff to inform management when we have issues to be dealt with, and it's up to the staff to correct that. But the follow-up is important to be sure that's done. But again, they need to own the problem, not the audit department. But the audit department's job is to monitor it and wave the flag. So just want to make that point first. And
thank you.
you and I have had that discussion before. Could we go back to the prior IT audits with open findings slide? Jim and I had a pre-brief with Tyson Morris yesterday, and I think he's got some software contracts coming up trying to have approved. I think, do some of these address that?
So some of the issues here will be addressed, especially in the in-process column, and then I think the number 1 on the last item I think will be addressed with additional technology and software. Some of the number 3 on the first line. So some of these will be addressed with technology, and I think some of these will be addressed with just kind of revamping some of the processing in one particular area of the technology space.
But some of these contracts.
But it's very important to get that technology because we're such a big organization, we can't do stuff manually. I mean, it just like doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay. And the last point I wanted to do is talk about overtime.
Yes.
And it is what it is, and it's up to management to decide when it needs. I'm just curious, the approval process, we hear from time to time that sometimes it's not being monitored. Maybe it is or isn't, but to me, maybe that's a George question or colleague question. But what do we have in place to be sure that the supervisors are approving this appropriately and just not letting someone stay on the job and run the town.
This is one of the goals of the audit, is to kind of, from an audit perspective, to verify that, but I can't answer for George or for the operations.
Well, I'll start, and I'll allow George to pipe in if there's stuff that I've missed. But especially when we start talking about the front line, the operational group, that's the larger body of workforce that we need to keep an eye on. And I don't mean the people, but the processes that we need to keep an eye on. We have local managers in the garages. We do have, checklists and clerks, if you will, to record attendance on a regular basis. What we didn't have until about a year ago was our workforce superintendents that would go behind and follow up to make sure that the paperwork has been addressed. Outside of that, George, if there's some other processes, some face-to-face type things that we use to ensure that people are there. But I will say, Al, that it's a lot of the folks in George's team and the workforce managers that have alerted us to the idea that maybe there's more we can do. So let's run an audit and start to tighten up the process.
And we certainly have a good handle on what the drivers of overtime are. So just making sure that we are, that's front of mind, and that, that next level above the frontline supervision is making that a part of their daily task. We know, for example, that there is, we're going to spend some overtime when we're in support of, be it capital projects or special events. It's important that we plan those things out, and we've been doing some of these activities long enough. We have a pretty good idea of how much overtime we should be spending, and it's just making sure that I heard you say follow up.
I'll just add that in some cases when we do the analysis, the overtime spent to achieve a particular task is actually less than the full-time equivalent body with the overheads that it costs to have those people on. So sometimes the overtime accumulation, although it's high, it is not quite as high as it might otherwise have been had it been an FTE workforce addressing it.
No, overtime is very appropriate and is the right thing, and it's great that people will spend the time when they need to put in the extra time. I'm just pointing out that from the approval process, sometimes it's very easy for someone to sit on overtime and spend 22 hours when it takes them 12 to do the job. That's all I'm.
Right. You'll also have that the outfit that this board has approved, the FSO contract, is going to be laser focused on that very idea, especially when it comes to wrench time in the bus department. How much time does it actually take to change out this component, and how much time are these individuals taking? So that's one of the key areas of focus that that contract will be looking at.
And then really making sure that we are in front of and quickly identifying outliers, so that if there's an outlier, there's quick intervention. Okay.
On a positive note about overtime, some of us in the room here were able to attend the MARTA Police Awards that were handed out this week. I think Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember what day it was. But and in the program, we had 130 MARTA police officers with perfect attendance this year.
All right.
So while we are always going to have some of these issues, I think the more we can focus on that, 130 people had perfect attendance. So just hats off. And next, Mr. Frierson.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just going.
Yes. I wanted to go back to the slide number 2, the Indian Creek Station follow-up audit. And it kind of leads me to the comment that Mr. Pond made concerning these findings. This one here has been there since February, and I know that you acknowledge that they're there. I would hope that these things would come to a close a little bit sooner. I know that these things are open, but here we are in May, and some of these things are still lingering, and I would thought that they would kind of move to a little bit closer to closure than they are now. So I don't know.
We received the responses at the end of April, and as I said, I think 2 of the 3 will probably be able to be closed.
Okay.
And sometimes it just takes a while to get things in the right place.
Okay.
But that's what I can say.
Okay, that's fine, and I understand, your role in this. I just hope that we could just narrow this down a little bit sooner, so that it's not open so much. Then my other comment has to do with, I know that at one time we were looking at the Atlanta streetcar as a area of operations and audit, and I hadn't seen that in a while. Like that, maybe that's something that we might want to consider for 2026 in terms of operations, because I think there were some safety concerns that were brought to our attention a while back, and I just want to, that kind of always kind of keeps my attention.
Yeah, we did an audit, I think, at the end of about this time last year, at the end of fiscal 24 of the Atlanta streetcar, and we looked a lot at safety.
Yeah. Okay.
And we looked at like safety at the very granular detail, including whether they store lithium-ion batteries there and things that are really weird because of the location of the maintenance facility under the bridge. We were laser focused on certain elements of safety there. We had a finding related to kind of like one of the maintenance issues, which was fixed. So we would, take a look, and I will take a look and see if there's another audit that's justified for a streetcar, especially from a safety point of view. But I feel like we did a very thorough job about a year and a half ago looking at what they're doing from a safety point of view. And it seemed to be pretty much okay. I think they fixed the issue that there was before around the wheel truing.
Sure, yeah.
There's a contract with Siemens, I believe, that's in place because, that's the best way to kind of outsource that. So, but I appreciate the feedback, and I will do another round of review myself just to assure you that whether we want to do that or not.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Durrett, you had your light on. Are you okay? Ms. Harris?
Good morning. Just a question about the prior operational audit with the Clayton County Ops maintenance. I'm looking at this and I'm reading that the project management plan doesn't appear to be followed. So I guess the question is this an outside agency or is this internal within MARTA that the project management plan was not followed?
This within MARTA.
Within MARTA. So so going back in where it says the inefficient use of the project schedule and the documents. So has training gone to the employees to be, or the site manager, whoever's supposed to be looking at it? I'm looking at the date that it was identified, and in the time frame, it looks like they have that either your department is to report out about it or that they have to correct the deficits. Just trying to understand it a little bit more.
This deadline there represents when the business, in this case Capital, believes they'll be able to remediate completely that deficiency. Whether it's related to training, whether it's related to, better use, for example, the project schedule control tool, and the dates are different, but sometimes it does take a little bit of time to fix things, given the resources they have. And this, just kind of based on my experience, these seem to be logical and rational timelines. I'm always a little wary when people give me a timeline that's, in 2 weeks, because that means they aren't going to get it done.
Right.
In the real world, it does take us a little bit of time to get things done. And in my experience, these look like bona fide, legitimate timelines. We don't want them to be years out, but we don't want them to be, tomorrow, because we know that's not realistic. And we will follow up to make sure these things are actually done, and not just a promise that they will be done, which we have received the written promise that they will be done. But then come July 31st on the second bullet point, for example, we'll verify that they were actually done. And I'm sure we'll meet in the meantime to make sure we're getting there. So.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think it goes back to what Mr. Pond said. Obviously, the management team would do the follow-up, and I'm hoping that they would have some checkpoints to make sure that things are appropriate to have the final result by the end of the date. So thank
Yeah,
you.
and I realize and I fully believe that management needs to fix their issues and improve operations. But I think we have found that it's helpful for the internal audit to kind of have checkpoints along the way, because sometimes crises appear somewhere else, people's attention gets diverted, and I think having these kind of periodic checkpoints before the due date helps us to avoid unnecessary drama in this room.
Do we have any other questions regarding this? Emil, I might put you on the spot, but at last month's work session, we actually had a contract come back to us that internal audit had found discrepancies, I don't remember, and they had voided the contract, and I think that was because of some work that y'all had done, so thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are there other matters that need to come before the audit committee today? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.